She dragged my pregnant wife out of an ER bed because it violated HOA policy. 6 hours later, our daughter was born early, tiny, struggling, and that same woman stood there with a clipboard documenting it like it was an inspection. The judge called it attempted manslaughter. I call it what it really was, HOA tyranny with a smile. My name's Mark Ellison. I'm a forensic video analyst. I analyze lies for a living, frame by frame, timestamp by timestamp. But nothing could have prepared me for the frame that nearly broke my life. Whispering Hills was supposed to be safe, a quiet, eco-certified gated community where people cared about lawns more than politics. My wife Naomi and I bought our first home there. She was 6 months pregnant after losing our first baby the year before. She wanted peace, stability, a place where every sidewalk felt like a promise. What we got instead was Dolores Wickham. Dolores was the HOA president, mid-50s, precise hair, navy blazer, clipboard, always tucked under her arm, like a badge of power. She spoke like she'd memorized every regulation ever written. Community standards, she called them. I called them traps. It started small. A letter in the mailbox. Unauthorized markings on communal property. Naomi had let 2 neighborhood kids draw chalk hearts on our driveway. We laughed it off, cleaned it, thought it was over. The next week, unauthorized congregation of minors. Same 2 kids, same front yard. 2 toddlers with sidewalk chalk were now a security concern. Dolores called it non-conforming behavior. I called it harassment. But Naomi, God, she always tried to keep the peace. She'd say, "Don't make enemies, Mark. We'll just pay the fine, move on." And we did. Until the fines became visits. Dolores started showing up at our door. Routine compliance checks, she'd say without notice. She'd glance inside like she owned the place. When Naomi's doctor sent a letter asking for emergency access to the clubhouse in case of pregnancy complications, Dolores denied it. Said medical use wasn't part of approved community functions. Then came that night. Naomi collapsed on the front steps, clutching her stomach, gasping through the pain. I didn't think, I just acted. The clubhouse was closer than the hospital, and it was supposed to be medically reinforced. I carried her there in my arms, praying someone would meet me halfway. The EMTs arrived 3 minutes later. Dolores showed up at 4, clipboard in hand, expression blank. "She's not authorized to be here," she said to the medics. "This is HOA property. You're trespassing." I'll never forget that tone, cold, detached, bureaucratic, like she was quoting policy from a script. The EMTs hesitated. Naomi groaned. One medic said, "Ma'am, this woman's in distress." Dolores folded her arms. "And she's violating Code Section 11C. If she stays here, this becomes a liability." Then she did it. She ordered them to move my wife mid-episode. They actually started to lift her. I remember yelling. I remember Naomi's hand slipping from mine. I remember Dolores standing there recording the entire thing on her phone while my wife screamed in pain. I didn't fight back. Not then. Because in that moment all I cared about was getting Naomi to the hospital alive. Our daughter was born 6 hours later, 4 weeks early, barely breathing. The nurse said the stress could have caused it. Naomi apologized to me, whispering, "I'm sorry I let her win." She didn't know I had already started recording everything. For months I'd been collecting footage. HOA meetings, emails, doorbell cams, every violation, every lie. Dolores thought she ruled by silence. I was going to make mine loud. The first time I played the clip in court, Dolores didn't flinch. She stood there like she was above it all. But the judge's eyes told a different story. That's when I knew I couldn't stop. Because it wasn't just about Naomi anymore. It was about a system built to crush anyone who didn't fit their perfect postcard image of community. I spent nights at my kitchen table surrounded by folders, printouts, and highlighters. My home looked more like a crime lab than a living room. And maybe that's what it was, because Dolores wasn't just a bad neighbor. She was orchestrating a campaign. The pattern was too precise to be random. Single mothers, older folks, immigrants, anyone who couldn't fight back. Dolores labeled them as non-compliant residents. I found an internal HOA email where she used that exact phrase. and Naomi's name was right under it. Still, part of me wondered if I was going too far. I wasn't sleeping. I was angry all the time. I caught myself yelling at shadows, rewatching clips until dawn. One night, Naomi touched my shoulder and said, "You can't lose yourself in this." I stared at her exhausted and asked, "What if I'm wrong? What if I'm the problem?" She smiled softly. "Then prove it with facts." "That's what you do, right?" That snapped me out of it. She was right. I didn't need revenge. I needed evidence. So I filed for a compliance hearing. I wanted to face Dolores on her own turf. The meeting room was as sterile as her personality, lavender air freshener certificates on the wall, fake calm. She sat at the head of the table tapping her pen. Next to her was Talia Mendes, the compliance officer, younger, quiet, nervous. When Dolores spoke, Talia looked down at her binder like she wanted to disappear. "Mr. Ellison," Dolores said, "this is a procedural review, not a courtroom. Let's keep it professional." "Of course," I said. "Let's start with your signature on this document." I slid a printed copy of the emergency access denial across the table. She didn't blink. "That's standard policy." I clicked my remote. The screen behind me lit up with a still frame Naomi lying on the clubhouse cot and EMT kneeling beside her. Dolores in the doorway, phone raised. "Standard policy?" I asked. Talia's hand trembled. Her pen slipped across the page, leaving a diagonal ink slash. Dolores's jaw tightened. "That image proves nothing." "Then maybe the next one will." I played a short clip, Dolores shouting, "Remove her," while the medics hesitated. Silence filled the room. Talia closed her binder slowly. I left that meeting without a resolution, but I saw it in Talia's eyes. She knew. And once someone like that starts questioning authority, the whole tower begins to shake. The next morning, Dolores confronted me at the mailbox. "You're in violation again, Mr. Ellison," she said. She held a folded notice like it was a dagger. "Misuse of medical exemptions and obstruction of board communication." I looked at her car, idling by the curb. "You mean recording you breaking the law?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're smart, Mark. Dangerous smart. But board memory outlives outrage. People here want peace. Peace isn't compliance," I told her. "It's consent." She didn't respond, just turned and drove off. But that was the moment I stopped being afraid. A few days later, Talia emailed me. One line, "Meet me 20 minutes." The cafe was half empty. She walked in wearing a long coat and sunglasses like she was smuggling state secrets. She slid a flash drive across the table. "Board recordings," she said quietly. "Not the public uploads, the real ones." "What's on them?" I asked. "Fraud," she whispered. "She fakes votes, rewrites, rules, silences anyone who objects. I was supposed to back her up, but your wife, she almost died. I can't stay quiet anymore." When I opened the files that night, my hands were shaking. Dolores's voice echoed through my speakers. "We don't need to file the vote if no one objects loud enough." That was the moment she went from petty tyrant to criminal. She wasn't enforcing rules, she was rewriting them to fit her ego. I built a plan. 3 phases. Phase 1, leak the procedural fraud, get the story out. Phase 2, release the medical footage, show the human cost. Phase 3, submit a formal complaint with every timestamp, every violation, every signature she forged. I met a reporter, Diane Tran, in the parking lot behind a local news station. She looked at me like she'd seen 1,000 angry citizens, but none this prepared. "If half of what you're claiming is real," she said, "this isn't a neighborhood story. It's a state investigation." I handed her the drive. "Then let's make it one." The first article dropped a week later. Abuse of power. Inside Whispering Hills, HOA. The photo showed Dolores at a podium smiling. The audio clip was unmistakable, her own voice admitting to bypassing votes. By sunset, the neighborhood message board exploded. Dozens of residents shared their own horror stories. Dolores tried to control the narrative, calling an emergency community meeting for that same night. She'd never moved that fast before. That's how I knew she was scared. I went. I didn't sit. I stood in the back and watched. The room was packed neighbors I'd never seen before, some clutching printed violations, some holding their phones ready to record. Dolores walked in wearing the same navy blazer, acting calm, but scanning the crowd like prey, pretending to be predator. "We understand there's been confusion due to misleading media coverage," she began. "All board actions were within legal scope." Someone shouted from the front row, "Was that your voice on the tape, Dolores?" Her smile faltered. "I'm not here to respond to doctored audio." Another resident stood. "You said the same thing at my mediation." The room buzzed with murmurs. For the first time, Dolores looked cornered. Then the door opened. Talia walked in. She didn't wear her badge, just a black binder in her hand. "I have the official meeting minutes," she said, voice steady. She stepped to the front. No motion was ever passed restricting medical access to the clubhouse. Any claim otherwise is false. Dolores turned pale. "You don't have the authority, I have the truth," Talia said. Another board member stood. "She never told us about the vote. She filed it under procedural urgency." Another followed. "None of us signed it." And just like that, the wall cracked. Dolores's kingdom of forms and fines crumbled in front of everyone. The city's compliance officer stepped up to the mic. Effective immediately, he said, the Whispering Hills HOA board is under full audit pending investigation into fraudulent governance and medical endangerment. The crowd erupted not in cheers but in disbelief. Dolores didn't speak again. She just sat there, hands folded, white-knuckled, as the cameras flashed and the room filled with the sound of people realizing they'd been controlled for years. I didn't gloat. I didn't even move. I just watched the woman who once told me my wife wasn't authorized to be here finally lose the only thing she'd ever loved: control. When it was over, I walked outside. The air felt different, lighter, quieter, honest. I looked at the clubhouse across the lawn. The keypad was gone, replaced with a simple push-bar door. No more codes, no more gatekeeping. For the first time, it actually looked like a community center. Dolores resigned 3 days later. The board disbanded a week after that. All her violations were nullified. Naomi's case was cited in the city's report as willful procedural abuse resulting in medical endangerment. They renamed the clubhouse after her, the Naomi Ellison Community Commons. I didn't ask for revenge. I asked for accountability. And sometimes that's enough. Because in the end, I didn't win by yelling louder than her. I won by letting her own voice bury her. Lesson learned. Never confuse silence with peace, and never let anyone turn your home into their kingdom.